I noticed it by accident, not because I was looking for something strange, not because anything felt wrong, just a small detail. It was the closet door. The apartment was simple. One room, a small kitchen, and a narrow hallway with a built-in closet. Nothing unusual, at least. That's what I thought the first time it happened. I didn't question it. I opened the closet to grab my jacket. Everything looked normal. Clothes, shoes, a box on the top shelf. I took the jacket, closed the door, and walked away. A few minutes later, I came back. I had forgotten my keys. I opened the same door again, and for a second I paused. The jacket I had just taken was still there. I stared at it. Same color, same position, hanging exactly where it had been before. I frowned, looked down at my hand. I was still holding the jacket. I didn't understand, so I reached inside the closet and touched the second one. It felt real. Two identical jackets. For a moment, I thought maybe I had two, but I just never noticed. That made sense. So I closed the door. And told myself to forget about it. But later that day, I opened it again. This time, the box on the top shelf was gone. Not moved, not hidden. Gone. Stepped closer, looked around. The rest of the closet was the same. Clothes, shoes, the jacket, but the box was missing. I checked the apartment. Kitchen, table, floor. Nothing. When I came back, I stood in front of the door for a long time. Then I opened it again. The box was back, exactly where it had been before, like it had never left. That's when I stopped thinking it was normal. That night, I didn't open the closet again, not because I was scared, but because I wanted to be sure. If something was changing, I needed to see it happen. So the next morning, I tried something simple. I took a pen. And marked the inside of the door. A small line, barely visible. Then, I closed it, waited a few seconds, and opened it again. The line was still there. Everything looked the same. I almost felt relieved. Until I noticed something else. The shoes. They weren't mine. Same place. Same position, but different. Slightly different color. Different shape. Close enough to be familiar, but not the same. I stepped back slowly, closed the door again, waited longer this time. Then opened it. My shoes were back, exactly as before. I didn't touch them. I just stood there, trying to understand something that didn't want to be explained. That evening, I made a decision. I would treat it like a pattern, not a mistake. I took my phone, started recording, placed it on a shelf, facing the closet. Then I stepped back, opened the door. Everything normal. Closed it. Waited. Opened it again. Still normal. I stopped recording. Watched the video. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Then, in the moment between closing and opening, there was a frame. Just one. Where the door was closed, but not the same. The handle was slightly different. The surface, smoother. Like it wasn't the same door. I replayed it. Again. Single frame appeared. I zoomed in, and that's when I noticed something else. The line I drew wasn't there. In that frame, the door had no mark, like it belonged somewhere else. I stopped the video, sat in silence. Then slowly turned toward the closet. The door was closed. Still. Unchanged. But now I knew it wasn't always the same door. And whatever was behind it wasn't always the same place. I stood up, walked toward it. This time, I didn't hesitate. I opened the door again. The closet was there, but something felt different. Not visually. Not clearly, just enough to notice. Like the space was slightly deeper than before. I leaned in, and for a moment I thought I saw something move. Not fast, not clear. Just not still. I stepped back, closed the door. My hand stayed on the handle. And for the first time, I asked something out loud. Where does this go? The apartment stayed silent. Of course it did. But somehow, The question didn't feel unanswered, dot it felt acknowledged. That night, I didn't sleep much, not because I was afraid, but because I kept thinking about something simple. If the door changes, then how many versions are there? And more importantly, how many times had I opened it without noticing? I didn't open the door right away the next morning. I stood in front of it, watching. It looked exactly the same. Same surface, same handle, same small mark I had drawn the day before. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't fixed, that it wasn't permanent. I reached for the handle, then stopped. Instead, I stepped back. If it really changed, then opening it randomly wasn't enough. I needed to understand how. So I started small. I placed a chair in front of the closet, sat down, and waited. Not for something to happen, but for something to feel different. Minutes passed. Nothing. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Then very slowly something shifted. Not the door. Not physically, but the feeling around it, like the space behind it had adjusted. I stood up immediately and opened it. The closet was there, but this time, everything was slightly off. The clothes were mine, but arranged differently. The box on the top shelf was open. I had never opened it before. I stepped closer. Inside there were items I didn't recognize. A notebook, a small object wrapped in paper, something metallic. I didn't touch them. I just looked, trying to understand something simple. This wasn't random. This was a version. Another version of the same space. I stepped back, closed the door, took a breath, then opened it. Again. Everything was back to normal. The box was closed, like nothing had happened. I nodded slowly. So that was the pattern. Each time, not completely different. Just slightly. Enough to notice. Enough. That day, I started writing things down. Time. Position. What I saw. What changed. At first, it felt unnecessary. But after a few attempts, I noticed something. The changes weren't random. They followed a rhythm, not exact, but consistent. If I opened the door too quickly, nothing changed. If I waited just long enough, it did. I didn't know how long enough was, but I could feel it. That same shift in the air. That same quiet adjustment, like something aligning. That evening, I tried again. I stood in front of the door, closed my eyes. Waited. And when I felt it, I opened it. This time, the space was deeper, not physically larger, but it felt like it extended further back. The clothes were fewer, the shelves slightly different, and the box was missing again. Stepped closer, then I noticed something new. The back wall. It wasn't the same. There was a line, a vertical seam, like the wall wasn't a wall, but something behind it. I didn't touch it. Not yet. I just stood there. Looking. Then slowly, I closed the door. My heart wasn't racing, but my thoughts were, because now, this wasn't just about objects changing. The space itself was different. That night, I made another decision. I would leave something behind, something small, something easy to track. I took a coin, placed it on the closet floor. Right in the center. Then I closed the door. Waited. Opened it again. The coin was gone, but in its place, there was another one. Similar. Same size, but not mine. I picked it up. It felt older, worn in a different way. I turned it in my hand, then looked back at the closet. This time, I didn't close the door immediately. I stayed. Watching. And slowly, very slowly, I realized something. The space wasn't just changing when I opened the door. It was already different. Before I opened it. The door wasn't creating the change. It was revealing it. I stepped back, closed the door. And for the first time, I understood something important. This wasn't a closet. It was a connection. Between places that looked the same, but weren't. Later that night, I stood there again. In the dark, facing the door, and quietly I said, "How many are there?" The apartment stayed silent, but this time, the silence felt different. Not empty, structured, like it had an answer. Just not one I could hear yet. I placed my hand on the handle, and this time I didn't wait. I opened the door, and immediately I knew this one was further than the others. The air felt still, deeper, and somewhere inside, very faint, I thought, I saw a light, not from the ceiling, not from outside, from somewhere beyond the space itself. I didn't step in, but I didn't close the door either, because now I wasn't just curious. I was close to something that wasn't just different, but connected, in a way I was only starting to understand. I didn't close the door, not this time. The space inside felt stable, not like the others, not shifting, not waiting, just there. I stood at the edge, looking in. The light I had noticed before, it was still there, faint, soft, coming from deeper inside the space, beyond where the closet should end. I took a slow breath. Then, for the first time, I stepped in. Nothing happened. No sudden change. No sound. Just the same quiet, but different from my apartment. This silence wasn't empty. It felt full. I turned slightly, looked behind me. The door was still open. My apartment was still there. Unchanged. That mattered. It meant I could go back. At least for now. I looked forward again. The space extended further than it should. The shelves were fewer now, the walls smoother, and that light clearer. I walked slowly toward it. Each step felt precise, like I wasn't just moving through space, but aligning with it. The further I went, the quieter everything became. Not less sound, more still. Then I reached the source. It wasn't a lamp, not a window. It was a doorway. Another one. Same size. Same shape, but without a handle. Just an opening, filled with soft light. I stopped in front of it. For a moment I didn't move, because I understood something. This wasn't random. This was progression. Each version led further. And this was further than I had ever gone. I looked back again. The original door was still visible. Smaller now. Further away. Still open. Still connected. That mattered. I turned back to the new doorway, and quietly I asked, "Is this the same?" The space didn't respond, but the question felt incomplete, because I already knew the answer. It wasn't the same. That's why I was here. I stepped closer. The light didn't change, didn't react. It just existed. I reached out my hand, paused. Then slowly moved it through the doorway. Nothing. No resistance. No shift. Just space. I stepped back slightly. Thinking. Then I did something simple. I took the coin I had found earlier and gently tossed it through. It disappeared into the light. No sound. No sign. Just gone. I waited. Nothing came back. That was new. Every other time things returned. Changed. Replaced. But this didn't. I stepped closer again. And for the first time, I felt something different. Not curiosity. Not observation. Choice. I could go back. Close the door. Forget everything. Or I could continue. Not just looking, but moving forward. I turned one last time. The apartment was still there. Familiar. Quiet. Unchanged. But now it felt smaller. Not physically. Just less complete. I looked back at the light, and without rushing, without hesitation, I stepped through. For a moment, there was nothing. No space. No sound. No direction. Then I was somewhere else. The room looked familiar. Almost identical. Same layout. Same closet. But everything felt clearer. Sharper. Like this version was more defined. More real. I turned slowly. The doorway behind me was gone. Not closed. Gone. I stood still. Not panicking. Just noticing. Then after a few seconds, I saw it. On the wall, another door, same as before, closed, waiting. I walked toward it, slowly, and this time before opening it, I understood something simple. This wasn't a single change, it was a sequence. A path, and each door was a step. I placed my hand on the handle, and quietly I said, "How far does this go?" The room stayed silent, but now the silence felt different, not unknown, expected. I opened the door, and for a moment I saw something I hadn't seen before. Not a room, not a closet, but multiple doors. Endless, extending further, each one slightly different, each one leading somewhere I didn't step in, not yet, but now I knew. This wasn't just happening, it had structure, and I was already inside it. I didn't step into the space with the endless doors. Not immediately. I stood at the threshold, looking, each door looked familiar, same shape, same size, but slightly different. Some were lighter, some darker, some looked older. None of them were open. I stayed still, trying to understand something simple. This wasn't random, it couldn't be. There was too much structure, too much consistency. This place wasn't chaos, it was organized. I took a slow breath. Then I stepped forward. The floor felt solid, the air unchanged. But the further I moved, the more I noticed something. The doors weren't placed randomly. They followed a pattern. Sequence, not straight, not curved, but intentional, like each one had a position that mattered. I walked closer to the nearest door, paused, reached out, and touched it. Felt real. Same as before. But as soon as my hand rested on the surface, I felt something. Not through my skin. Through awareness. Like the door wasn't just an object, but a point, a connection. I didn't open it. Instead, I stepped back and looked around again. There were many, more than I could count at once, and yet I had a strange certainty. I wasn't lost, not yet, because I still remembered something. The first door, the closet, the apartment. I turned, and behind me, there it was, the door I came through. Closed now, but present. Different from the others, familiar. I walked toward it, placed my hand on the handle, and paused. If I opened it, I knew what I would see. The apartment. The starting point. But something stopped me. Not fear, just timing. It felt too early. Like leaving now would mean missing something important. So I let go, turned back toward the others, and this time I chose one, not the closest, not the furthest, one that felt aligned. I stepped toward it. Each step felt quiet, clear. When I reached it, I didn't hesitate. Opened the door. The room behind it appeared instantly. No transition. No delay. Just there. It looked like my apartment. But different. The table was in another place, the light slightly dimmer, and on the floor there was something. A note. I walked in, picked it up, unfolded it. You came further. I looked around the room. It felt familiar. But not mine, like a version I had never lived in. I placed the note back. Then turned. The door behind me was still open, and beyond it, I could see the space with all the other doors. Still there, still waiting. I stepped back through, returned to the larger space, and something became clear. Each door was not just a variation. It was a position, a step in something structured, and the further I moved, the more complete it felt. I walked again, past several doors this time. Not stopping, until something changed. One of the doors was already slightly open. I slowed down. That hadn't happened before. All the others had been closed, but this one wasn't. I approached it carefully. The opening was small, just enough to see light inside. Different light. Not Warm dot, not soft dot, clear dot. I stood in front of it dot, and for the first time I felt something new dot, not curiosity, not calm dot, recognition dot, like this door wasn't just another step. It was important. I placed my hand on it dot and gently pushed it open. The space inside was not like the others dot. It wasn't a room dot. It was empty dot, not dark dot, not light. Just open dot, without walls, without edges. I didn't step in, but I understood something immediately. This wasn't a destination dot. It was a transition, a place between. I stepped back, closed the door dot slowly dot, and as it shut, the feeling faded. Stood still, looking at it dot, then turned again. Back toward the space dot, the doors, the structure. And now I understood something more clearly than before. This wasn't infinite dot. It just felt that way. Because I didn't know the order yet. But there was one. There had to be. I looked at the doors again, carefully this time. And then I noticed it. Some of them had marks dot, small dot, barely visible lines. Just like the one I had drawn on my closet door. I stepped closer, looked at one of them. The mark was different, but similar dot, intentional dot, left by someone, not me, which meant I wasn't the first. I stood there in silence, not surprised dot, just aware. Then quietly I said, "Who else?" The space didn't answer, but the question didn't feel empty dot. It felt recorded dot, like everything else here dot. And for the first time I realized something else. These doors weren't just places. They were traces of movement dot, of choices, of someone going further dot, just like me. I looked ahead dot at the endless sequence, and this time I didn't hesitate. I took another step forward. I stopped counting the doors dot at some point. It didn't matter anymore. There were too many. Or maybe not too many dot, just enough. I kept moving. Not quickly, not aimlessly dot. Each step felt chosen dot. The doors around me no longer felt identical. Now I could tell the difference. Immediately dot, not by how they looked, but by how they felt. Some were quiet. Some felt unfinished, and some felt like they had already been opened. I paused in front of one of those dot. There was no visible mark dot, no sign. And yet I knew dot, someone had been here before dot, not recently dot, not physically, but intentionally. I placed my hand on the door. For a moment, I didn't open it. Instead, I listened dot, not for sound, for memory dot, and slowly something became clear. This place didn't store objects dot, it stored movement. Every door, every step, every choice left something behind, not visible, but present. I opened the door. The room inside was quiet, familiar again, but not mine. This one felt older. The air was still. The space untouched dot, and in the center of the room, there was something new. A chair dot, simple dot, facing the door, like it had been placed there for someone to sit. I stepped closer dot, then stopped. For a moment, I understood something. This wasn't random. This was a pause, a place to stop. Sat down dot. The room didn't change. The space didn't react, but something inside me did dot. For the first time, I wasn't observing. I wasn't moving forward. I was still. And in that stillness, everything became clearer dot. The apartment, the closet, the first door. They weren't the beginning. They were just where I noticed. I stood up slowly, turned back toward the door, and as I did, I saw something I hadn't seen before. On the wall next to the door, there was a mark. A simple line, almost identical to mine dot, but older. Faded. I stepped closer, looked at it carefully, and without thinking, I raised my hand and drew another one next to it dot. Now there were two. I stepped back, and for a moment I felt something shift. Not in the room dot, in the pattern, like I had just become part of it. I opened the door, stepped back into the space with all the others. And now, everything looked different. Not visually, but structurally. I could see it. The connections. The way some doors aligned with others. The way certain paths repeated. It wasn't endless. It was layered. I walked again, more certain now, until I reached something unexpected. A door that looked exactly like mine. The same mark. The same handle. The same surface. I stopped. This wasn't similar. This was exact. I stepped closer, placed my hand on it. And for the first time I felt hesitation again. Not fear. Recognition. I opened the door. My apartment. Exactly as I left it. The table. The notes. The quiet. Everything. I stepped inside. Turned around. The door behind me was just a closet again. Closed. Still. I walked closer. Placed my hand on it. Waited. Nothing. No shift. No difference. Just a door. I stepped back. Looked around the apartment. It felt the same, but I knew it wasn't. Because now I understood something I hadn't before. The door didn't change the space. I did. I walked to the table, picked up a piece of paper, and wrote, "There are more." I placed it near the door, then sat down and waited. Not for something to happen, but because I knew eventually it would. And when it did, I wouldn't just open the door. I would know where I was going.